unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. We continue our around the world travels. We're approaching 400 episodes of our podcast, and it's been so great to talk to creative practitioners, singer-songwriters, authors, even architects, engineers, creative professionals in all fields to find out about their inspiration and connections to get their work out into the world. And I'm so glad to be stamping our creative passport in Taipei, Taiwan today to talk to celebrated playwright and theater director Stan Lai. Stan is joining me today to discuss his new book, CreativitRy. Asia's iconic playwright reveals the art of creativity. It's been just released by Anthem Press.
Hey, Mark, it's my pleasure and honor to be on your show.
And I appreciate the hour that you're with us.
It's quite okay. It's only midnight. Midnight.
Very good. He's been called by one critic the major contemporary Asian playwright of his time, perhaps all time, and by the BBC as the best Chinese language playwright and director in the world. Stan was born in the U.S., raised in both America and Taiwan. He earned a PhD from UC Berkeley before launching a groundbreaking career that now spans over 40 acclaimed plays, including masterpieces like Secret Love of a Peach Blossom Land and A Dream Like a Dream. Well, and stay tuned. He'll be reading an excerpt from the book along our interview.
Thanks.
Well, Stan, CreativitRy.
Right.
Which, what a nice twist on the word creativity. It's a transformational guide. It's really blending a memoir, Buddhist philosophy, practical methods. Stan, you say in this book that CreativitRy is really that creativity lives within all of us. Each and every one of us has creativity inside. Tell us about that creative philosophy for you.
Okay. Well, when I wrote this book first in Chinese, I had been teaching for over 2 decades. I've been working as a playwright and director and done over 20 original plays for also over 2 decades. And I still couldn't figure out how to teach my students to be creative. It's a funny paradox. If you're creative, I can teach you to be more creative. But how do I get you from 0 to 1? And I thought, that's okay. It's not my job. It's not part of my job description. I never thought my teachers had that in mind. Hey, you're on your own for that one. They're not going to teach you because they don't know how to teach you and they don't know what to teach. So I went with that, but it always bothered me and frustrated me that I couldn't make my students creative. And so I pondered a long time about the creative process and how I got inspired to do many of the works that I did. And in one in particular, in the year 2000, I did a play called A Dream Like a Dream, which is a very special work because it's 8 hours long, for one. And for two, the audience is in a very special configuration, sitting in the middle of the theater while the play revolves around you. So when I think back at the inspiration for that moment, it all happened in my mind in a flash. And in that one split-second flash came such a universe of like over 100 characters, an 8-hour story, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I thought that if we can slow this down and see what actually happens in that flash, we might be able to understand more of creativity, because most people think that creativity is just for certain geniuses. Like Puccini said that every single note of Madame Butterfly came directly from God into his mind, and all he had to do was write it out. It was like he served the function of a printer, let's say, okay? And guys like Mozart and even John Lennon and Paul McCartney, where do all these ideas come from? You think, well, they're special, and therefore somehow the muses get to them. And so the question to me was, is creativity, where does it come from? Is it coming from outside, like the muses, or is it something from inside? So I said, let's slow this down real slow, frame by frame. Like if you're watching a NBA basketball game and, who's got the ball, who's out of bounds off of who, or the foul, did he slap his wrist or whatever? Anyway, I found in slowing it all down, that moment in my own mind, that what happens in the moment of inspiration is your mind, amazingly, pulls from files that are inside you. Okay, your mind cannot pull files Mark, I can't pull files that are in your mind
Yes.
or in the air. They're from my mind. Things from my own experience or things I've read that I've kept somehow inside my storage. And then the mind does something very more amazing, which is it combines different files. In other words, people that didn't know each other from my different files suddenly are put together into a separate file. And this is what is creativity in a nutshell. And so once I figured that out, I started to think we've every single one of us, we are born with creativity, but I see how society, even at home, at family, school, what it's doing is it's throughout your whole upbringing, you are being told not to be creative. Basically, society is telling you don't do that. To be on the safe side, please don't be creative. And so to really be creative, you have to start to relearn, or we might say unlearn a lot of the stuff, all the habits that we've been taught to do since we were kids. So that's why I wrote this book. And believe it or not, in the Chinese version, it sold over 1 million copies. It's sold over 1 million copies since
Fantastic.
2006. Yeah. And I said, finally, I've got to get this thing into English. So many friends have said, you've got to do it in English. And I said, they said, it's so simple, just translate it. And I said, no, that's not the way to do it, because just translating something doesn't really speak to your specific audience. Like I say things, I'm bilingual, so I say things in Chinese to a Chinese audience. I know how to talk to them, and you wouldn't say the same things to a Western audience because it just doesn't work that way.
The phrases,
So,
the metaphors, the so forth.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Just the tone.
Well, thinking of translating, I was also thinking just about your own creative expression and writing, going from the stage to the page, as I might say. Your plays are known for really emotional depth, philosophical points. I was thinking about the writing of this prose book, vis-a-vis writing for performance or writing for the stage. Did you have a different creative approach, or how was it for you in capturing these ideas?
Mark, I think that's a great question, but for me, it's not a big deal because I just shift. It's like shifting gears, or driving a different car. Let's put it that way. Because if I'm writing a play, I'm in a certain mode, and that mode is very different from writing a prose piece. And I did have the academic training from my days at Berkeley, where I got. I don't know. It's funny to like we as playwrights and directors kind of don't say that we have a PhD. Like
Yes.
especially when I was making films, my agent said, "Don't tell people you have a PhD." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because people then don't think you're a very good artist."
Yes.
But,
They don't want
but
the
I do have that.
scientists. They want the artists. Yes.
But I do have that training, and then so for me, prose writing is not that hard either. But it is a totally different brain situation. You're in a different mode.
Mhm. I'm very captivated by this idea of the introspection. I guess a lot of my creative training was certainly how to get inspired, how to observe, how to even find productivity hacks. And of course, in today's world, we're all about, can you find some sort of app or hack that will make you more creative? But there's even some roots of Buddhist thought and mindfulness and spiritual awareness that's shaped in this book. Where did
Yes.
this come for you?
Well, I've been practicing Buddhist for, decades and decades and decades. And with the Buddhist training, you see very clearly how, because it's mind training, and it's like we're normally like used to, let's say you go to the gym and you shape your body, right? But nobody often thinks about, can we shape our mind? Is that something that we can do? Or what's wrong with our mind? Or why is our mind flabby or whatever? What does it need to do? And what it needs to do is, it is so full of so much stuff and it's so cluttered that it doesn't have the space to let you be creative. And trust me, creativity needs space. You need space. It's like you have an empty glass, then you can pour water into it, right? And you can make a drink out of it. Now, if you don't have that empty glass, where do you pour the water? You pour it on the ground, you can't make a drink. It's the same with your mind. Our minds are like streaming, let's say 100 radio channels at this very moment. And our minds are the most incredible streaming machine you can find. And so the Buddhist training or any type of meditation training, once you see the problem, then you understand the fact that with a full and cluttered mind that's streaming 1,000 channels, you can't be creative. Then you're going to have to start turn some of them off. How do you start turning these channels off? And then you keep turning them off until finally, wow, you get to the quiet and you get to the space. And in that space, for me at least, and I know for many artists, it happens very quickly. You don't need to find an app. You are the app. That the app is you, and
Love that.
with that space, bang, it all comes together quickly.
Yes. That rather than just tuning in, quieting, turning
Yes.
things off,
Yes.
removing all that outside stimuli, right?
And Mark, you need the courage to do that, because I'm saying that once you turn everything off, then things come. It's not like you can't, while you're searching for something, the searching itself occupies the mind. And often, sometimes when I'm stuck, and everybody gets stuck in a creative project, you just have to let go and say, okay, I'm going to do something silly, and then just let your mind do something totally different. Because turning everything off is hard. But if you know how to do it, then once you turn it all off, the answers, boom, they just come. It's the fastest way to do that.
So good. I'd like to revisit something you said a minute ago about teaching creativity and creativity as an educational frontier. I read that CreativitRy, your book, is being adopted as a text in some departments
It
of
is.
creative studies. I'd love to know about how those initiatives came about, and what does that say about creativity in education today?
Okay. Well, I think my biggest breakthrough when writing this book was that taking my cue from a saying in Buddhist scripture, which I've read 1,000 times, it suddenly became clear to me that this doesn't pertain just to Buddhism, but to creativity and to most all learning, which is you proceed on the path with two qualities. The first one is called wisdom. The second is called method. You need both. And this is, okay, let's say you're studying to be a violinist at Juilliard. So Juilliard's going to teach you the method of how to play violin. Now, who's going to teach you the wisdom of violin? So maybe you're going to get it from one of your teachers, but that teacher may not have just a special, let's say a solid way of teaching that wisdom. It's something that rubs off of you. I thought about it and then said, wait a minute. You don't learn wisdom in school. You have to learn it in a separate domain, which is life. And that's why creativity is so hard, because you can go to the best academies and learn to be a theater director or whatever. And I can teach you all the techniques of being a director and a playwright. But how can you be a great director and a great playwright and a very creative one? You need wisdom. You need wisdom about your own technique, as well as the wisdom about your life and about life on earth, life in general. It's that thing. And Mark, you should probably find this funny, but I went for a definition of wisdom because I thought, how am I going to define this thing? Which we know what it is, but how do you define it? So I went to Webster's, and I wrote this in the book. And Webster's defines wisdom as the quality of being wise. And I go, wait a minute. Wisdom is the quality of being wise? All right. So I check wise. Wise is characterized by wisdom. And I'm going, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Either Webster's dictionary is cheating on us, or there's something very profound here in that we have not lost the definition of wisdom, but the authorities are ceding. They're saying this is for you to figure out. This is not for some authority to tell you what wisdom is, because telling you what wisdom is sort of like telling you how to lead your life and what to believe in and what makes your life fulfilling. That's up for you to decide. But if you have forfeited that obligation, then there's nothing people can do. So that's it. It's like wisdom is something we have to find for ourselves, and we have to define for ourselves, and it's an obligation. It's not anything else. It's something, if you really want to be serious about creativity, you have to dig in and figure out what is the wisdom of your craft and what is the wisdom of your life. And that is something that can't be found in your art, but it has to be found in your life.
So good. So inspirational.
I'm reading from chapter 4 of my new book, CreativitRy, and this chapter is called The Two Parts of Creativity. My breakthrough in understanding how to teach creativity came in 2000 when I returned to the Buddhist Studies seminar in Bodh Gaya, India, 1 year after I was inspired at that same place to write A Dream Like a Dream. One afternoon during a break from the teachings, my good friend, the Buddhist monk and author Mathieu Ricard, beckoned me to hop on a rickshaw with him to go to a nearby temple where a Buddhist relic was being displayed. On the ride, we discussed how practice on the spiritual path stresses the equal importance of wisdom and method. In the words of the 11th century master Atisha, the practitioner should continually cultivate the perfection of wisdom with skillful means. Wisdom without skillful means, and skillful means too without wisdom, are referred to as bondage. Therefore, do not give up either. I had been reminded over the years how wisdom and method needed to work hand in hand for progress in Buddhist practice. Suddenly I realized, isn't this true for creativity? To be an artist, you need to have skills. At the same time, you must have the wisdom to know what to use those skills for. Method and wisdom. If this was true, I reflected, our education in the arts, creativity, and actually most everything was missing one half.
So
Done.
good. So good. Well, we've been talking about the bridge or the connection between CreativitRy and education. But I also
Right.
think about the listeners of this podcast who are in the business of
Oh,
creativity,
yes.
in the corporate world or
Mhm.
trying to make
Mhm.
a living doing their music or in their art. And you've really also bridged this business side yourself.
Mhm.
And I was wondering what insights you could share with our listeners and what you might cover in the book about this connection between
Yeah,
creativity and business.
sure. Well, a lot of businesses in China, it's standard reading for them. And even Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, he
Yes.
gave me a wonderful endorsement. He told people, you have to read this book. He said he did that because he came to a play of mine. A friend of his said, you have to see this play by Stan Lai. It's called The Village. And he said, okay, okay. And he said came planning to spend 10 minutes because he asked for a seat at the back of the theater. He's a very busy man. And then this was while he was actually founding Alibaba and all these businesses that he did. And he wound up, of course, staying for the whole play. And we talked about that. And he said it was quite an amazing experience. But anyway, for myself, I'm in the theater, right? In the theater, we have a connection to business because we sell tickets. And you have to have a ticket to come and see a play of mine. But I don't consider myself a businessman, even though I'm probably, people would, if they went by the numbers, they'd probably consider me the most or one of the most successful playwrights around right now. But I don't consider that success. Whether ticket selling to me is not the gauge of whether my plays are successful or not. I have my own way of considering whether they're successful, and that is more of a artistic or spiritual assessment of my work. And the buzzword of, let's say, a couple of decades ago was called creative cultural industries. And all these, every meeting I went to, everyone wanted to ask me, "Yeah, what's your take on creative cultural industries?" And after I figured out what they were talking about, I realized that actually everyone is interested in the industry, the last word, and they don't really understand the creative aspect or the cultural aspect. What I've been doing is trying to create a creative cultural ecology. And I think, particularly in China, recently in my father's hometown, in this very, very small town in the middle of nowhere in southern China, and very impoverished. And through what I'm trying to build, which is an ecology, and people call it an industry, that's not the way to look at it. Then, then if you can build the ecology correctly, then the industry may come. But it's not a given. But if you don't build the ecology correctly, there's no chance for any business. Yeah.
So strong. So strong. Well, I want to think about this word ecology, but also maybe ecosystem. Your
Yes.
work and creativity really helps create connections between the US, Taiwan, China, and really
Mm.
across Asia. What is your perspective then on how creativity and the arts can bridge some of these otherwise political divides.
Yeah, there was a beautiful meeting on stage that I had with Robert Lepage, a Canadian director, and Bob Wilson, one of the preeminent theater artists of our time. He passed not too long after that meeting. But we talked about the essence of what theater was. And Bob Wilson, he said it so eloquently. He said, in this day and age, the arts are the only thing that's going to keep us all together. And it's true, because there's so many different ideas out there, how to live, how things should be run. And then there's so much misinformation out there that it's just wrong. It's just false. And how do we filter all of that? And when you see a beautiful production of any art, okay, it could be a painting, it could be a theater piece or a film or music. These things, they bridge people. Between people, they create bridges without explaining. There's no need, there's nothing to explain. You're just there and you're connected. And of course, I say that as artists, we have this quality of being like magicians or like sorcerers. And I like to think that way, because the sorcerer casts a spell, and you have to have your chops to be able to cast a spell. And once your spell is cast, the audience is in, and there's no such thing as time. Time doesn't exist anymore. And then once you're out of the spell, you're connected to something. Okay. And in the end, that depends on the wisdom of the creative person, not just the technique. We have the technique to make the spell, but is the spell worthwhile to you? Then in the end, I think we make connections between ourselves and our audience. And more importantly, we make connections between our audience and their connection to the world and to other people. And so I don't know if, I'm sure, Mark, I'm sure you have been in a situation, but I just hope everyone has had the experience of being a witness to an artistic performance in which you felt connected to everything, to a greater you. You're connected to something bigger than you. And that's the power of art if it's done by a real sorcerer. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Well, and the power of the live performances, versus, hey, it's great to watch it on YouTube. But the power of the live performance, you're in a theater with either hundreds or even thousands of other people. You're in a stadium at a concert, and you say, we're all sharing this same amazing experience. You're standing in Hyde Park in London with 60,000 other people, and you're like, wow, this is amazing.
And it takes you to somewhere beyond Hyde Park, London.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the way I feel whenever I'm in the presence of something like that.
Yes, I see what you mean, because then we're all going to our own, whether home, we're going to our own cities, we're going back to wherever we were.
Right.
I see what you mean.
But also it connects you to this sort of oneness. You feel, hey, we're all together and we're like one. Whereas normally in our lives, it's so compartmentalized that we seldomly feel that way.
Yes. Well, so good. Folks, I've been talking with Stan Lai, acclaimed playwright and theater producer and director. And we've been talking about his new book, CreativitRy, and life lessons, great wisdom, as we've been using that word about creativity. And I'll put all the links in the show notes, Stan, for your Instagrams and YouTubes and how to find the book. It's just such a fantastic piece of work, and I can't wait to read it in depth. As we close, Stan, I would love for us to revisit this idea of from inside, and we're born with this creativity, and sometimes we either lose it or society or forces outside, squash it. There's lots of people listening, I'm sure, that might be feeling disconnected, or that their creativity has been somehow reduced, or they're questioning. How can we rediscover that? How can we get it back if we've had it and we feel we've lost it?
Great question and deep question, and not an easy question to answer. May I tell us a little story that I have in the book? I was walking down the streets of Shanghai one day, and this woman with her 5-year-old boy was coming up toward me. And then it was a beautiful day, and the boy suddenly pointed to the sky and said, "Mama, look at the dog." All right. And then I looked up, wow, the clouds were so beautiful. And what happened next was rather cruel, because the mother slapped him on the back and said, "That's a cloud." And Oh my God, that hurt so much. And then I didn't know them, and they were gone. And I just thought, wow, there goes another. That boy will never ever see a dog or any animal in the sky again. And have you ever experienced that? Or have you ever done that maybe to your own kids or something like that? Maybe not so extreme, but we do that all the time when we're bringing up our own children. We're going to suppress them in this way or that. For what? For convenience, for safety. There's many ways, there are many reasons why you want to stop a person's creativity. You don't want to just let your kids run onto the street to feel the freedom of running between cars. That's not what you do. But can you see how when people say, get together and say, let's think outside the box, to me, that is really an insult to creativity. Because if you say that, that means that you're thinking that normally you're in a box. And then you have to go outside that box to gain this precious thing and then come back in. And that sounds to me like sort of science fiction. It's outside is this poisonous air or whatever, and you have to brave it and to get this precious thing and come back in. And I'm sorry, that's not the way I look at it. The way it should be is that there is no box. But unfortunately, we have really created that box. Our box has been created by our environment ever since we grew up. And maybe we are building that box for our own children. But the thing is, we have to take apart that box, because once it's apart, once you see things, can you see things as they are? Can you see things without labels? Because that's when you're a creative. When you have a label on everything, how can suddenly break out and suddenly become very creative? You can't. But if you can have this ability to say there's no box and there's no names, there's no labels on things. There's no label on experience even. You can't say that one experience of mine was greater than another for story matter, content. No, they're all equal. I can have a story of a king, slaying a dragon. Okay. And it could be less interesting than the sunlight streaming into my window onto a flower. So what I'm saying is, be less judgmental. See if you can take away labels. Suddenly you will start to find, hey, the creativity is starting to flow. Your mind is starting to get uncluttered. You're getting less and less streaming of all these thoughts and things. And that's the way to get it back, because it's been taken from you and it's there. I guarantee you it's there.
So wonderful. And I do know we've all experienced that. That's not a dog, it's a cloud.
Ah,
The
that's so
sky is
sad.
not orange and purple. The sky is blue. It's like,
Right.
well, actually, have you ever seen a beautiful sunset?
Oh,
It is orange
yeah,
and purple.
right, right, right,
So
right,
anyway,
right.
yes, we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
all observed and experienced that. Thanks for sharing
right.
that story. Stan, it's been such a great conversation, so inspirational. And thanks for sharing this work, well, all of your work with the world, but especially this book to really inspire our creativity. We really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it very much. My pleasure.
Yes. And listeners, come back as we continue these round the world journeys. And I also want to thank our sponsor, White Cloud Coffee. They help fuel creative conversations everywhere. And listeners, you can enjoy a 10% discount off your first order at whitecloudcoffee.com. Just use the word creativity at checkout to get your 10% discount. And of course, before you go, I'd love you to be able to download my free ebook, World of Creativity, when you visit mark-stinson.com. It's right there on the homepage. You'll be able to download a free ebook copy of A World of Creativity. And then come back for our next episode. We'll continue our around the world travels, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.